Well, do you feel like, are you up for some of my questions?
Sure.
Or
Yeah.
thoughts? Cool.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know how, like I've got some things. Yeah, I'm going to go here first. So when you were on your way to Panama, you stopped in Costa Rica.
Yes.
And you need to fuel up. I remember that. And you were flying what looked like a tiny, adorable Costa Rican flag.
Oh, yeah.
And I was curious about that. Do you have flags for like every country? Like, why did you fly the flag?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we have flags for all the countries that we could potentially have to stop at for either an emergency or a refuel or a docking. And that's sort of maritime protocol that when you enter a new country, you fly their flag. You also fly a little yellow flag, which is the Q flag, which is a quarantine. It's called a quarantine flag, but it's basically that until you've been accepted into a country by whatever the immigration process is, you fly that to say that your boat sort of should be kept separate from the general population until you're cleared to be in there.
Yep.
It's not necessarily because of health concerns, but it's they want to make sure that they know which boats have yet to be cleared to come into their country. Mm-hmm, so that's what the Q flag is.
So you're put into quarantine until that happens.
Yeah, which basically means you wait for somebody to come and clear you into their country, which is just like crossing the border, going through the airport. Like you go through the process so that you're accepted and welcomed into the new country that you're going into.
Have there been? Oh, sorry. Did I cut you off?
Nope.
Okay. Have there been countries where it's been, I don't know what to say, more complicated or easier or like?
Yeah, I'd say the most complicated one in terms of the sailing experience has been Australia. Mm-hmm. And the main reason is they have very strict controls over bringing food into Australia, and any living or natural, I'm going to say this wrong, but like an organism, but like fresh food, any foods, animals, anything like that, mm-hmm. Because they're an island and they're trying to protect something foreign from invading their island and destroying what they have. So there was quite a process of food inspection when we arrived in Australia that we had to wait for, that was separate from the immigration process. So we had the food inspectors come on the boat and go through the boat where we stored everything, what food we had on the boat. And there were things we were allowed to keep, and then there was a lot of things that unfortunately had to be thrown away. So that was complicated. And then country by country, it's different because, going to China as an immigration process was definitely probably the most extensive for most of the crew to have to fill out all the forms.
They really wanted to establish your identities?
Yeah, we had to go to the consulate office in Perth, Australia to get our visas applications processed, and then to speak to somebody who reviewed all the information and face-to-face checks and passports and all that.
To go to China?
To go to China.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was probably the most thorough process, at least from my experience. A lot of the sailors also had to get a in-person visa to come to the U.S. Like the British residents had to go to the U.S. Embassy to get a visa to come here by boat, and apparently that was sort of a lengthy process as well. So it kind of depends on the passport that you carry of what's required as you go country to country. But from a boating perspective, Australia was the most thorough. But they're also like that. Even if you just fly there, if they will check all your luggage and your, for any, snacks that you're bringing or anything like that. And a lot of stuff gets thrown out at the inspection area in the Australian airports.
So they don't end up with like invasive plant species or something like that.
Yeah, which makes total sense.
Yep.
So yeah, that's been a good learning as we've traveled too, is the difference country to country and who has the best passport, Yeah.
The relationships with the entering country. I have two. I think I'm going to combine these because like I have two curiosities just that that have been kind of top of mind. One is about looking back over this race. Like if you look back over it, and then I would be curious to hear about that in any case. Like if you look back at if I said to you, if you look back ... what would you say?
I love that question. I can take it any way I want.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. The first thing that came up when you said, when I look back, I think about the start of the race, and I had people who'd come out to send us off. Some family were there, but also some of my clients came out to cheer us on. But there were thousands and thousands of people in Portsmouth that lined the shore as the boats left. And that was really moving. I don't think any of us were ready for the amount of support that there was. So that still sits as one of the highlights when I think back about the race, is just that energy of leaving.
Wow.
It was really cool. And then the very first night, after we kind of did a little sort of a few little legs within the area around Portsmouth, and we headed out to the English Channel, we had one of the most spectacular sunsets we've had of the whole race.
Wow.
And so just watching Portsmouth disappear, and that sunset that night, somebody took a picture of me helming with the sunset in the background. That I think it ended up on the Clipper website, and just that first day of the race still, sort of gives you chills to think about, setting out on something that we had so little idea of what was ahead of us,
I immediately, it made me think of like Star Trek or something. You're like, you're going off to explore.
Yeah. There was so much of it that was unknown to all of us. We knew how to, we thought we knew how to use the boat and kind of, and we've gotten much better at that. We would laugh at how incompetent we were probably early in the race, but we've gotten so much better. But yeah, not knowing how the race would feel, what the weather was going to be, how the fleet would, how the racing would unfold, how we were going to do, how we were going to get along with each other. It's once you've untethered from the shore, it felt like, okay, I guess we're going to do this.
This is really actually happening.
And they weren't going to turn around and take you back to Portsmouth. And so there was something about that. There was sort of a finality about untying from the shore and going out there that was really, really cool. And a little, not overwhelming in a negative way, but it was an overwhelming feeling of just adventure. Wow. I remember hearing somebody say that I think it was maybe the Chouinard who started Patagonia, said it's only an adventure if you don't know the outcome. And I love that. And that definitely felt like what we were going through. We were setting off on something that we had no idea how it was going to end.
Wow.
And we still don't, it's still a month to go. And so still feels that way, a little less so now because we know parts of it, how it's going to be. That's
kind of a question that is naturally occurring to me, is like, are there times where you are a little a little less focused, a little more complacent, or does it still have like this incredible freshness of like, wow, wow, wow?
Yeah. I think that because we're much more competent in doing the things we need to do on the boat, there isn't any anxiety necessarily.
It's not like new baby energy.
No, yeah. And so when we see storms coming or anticipate the wind changing, we know what to do. We know how to respond. So that early in the race would have had some nervous energy to it.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's much more, not complacent at all, but just we know that we know how to deal with it. So we're confidence about that.
So does that, I mean, like what occurs to me is maybe that frees you up to just really enjoy it.
I think
like
so.
It's not complacency.
Yeah,
it's like,
so.
oh yeah,
yeah.
I know what this is.
Yeah, I mean, some of the crew who are on the more extreme side of things are like disappointed when we don't have more extreme weather. Mm-hmm. They're like, they want to keep pushing the envelope of what we're capable of doing. And we don't always get that kind of weather. So it's, so yeah, I mean, looking back, setting out on an adventure when you don't know how it's going to play out is a feeling that I'll never forget that feeling. Mm-hmm. And what a big part of this race that was. And I think the only other thing that, I mean, there's lots of things that come to mind, but the other big thing that is just the aspect of time, and how time is such a fascinating thing when you see how it plays out doing something like what we're doing. Like, as we were coming into DC, I was thinking to myself, it just feels like just the other day we were in, well, not only were we in China, I was in the hospital in Vietnam.
That's right.
And that doesn't feel like, that feels like a week ago.
Does it really?
Yeah. And the reality is we've gone from Asia to the east coast of the United States in a sailboat. And you couldn't convince me that there's been enough time to do that if you tried. And
wow.
And then there's days when you're out there and it just feels like, oh my goodness, like 3 days to go. Is it ever gonna like,
yeah,
there's no wind, or we're just floating around, and it's just like, it just seems to go so slowly sometimes. But the grand scheme of things, it is amazing to me that we've been able to go as far as we have already in what feels like such a short time frame.
It's interesting that you say that too, because it has gone so fast. I as a spectator, like what's happened for I don't know about others listening, but what's happened for me is it has had an influence on the rhythms of like my life. Like I cannot believe how close September ago feels to now.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is because it just, I don't know, like suddenly we're checking in again, and suddenly we're checking in again. And it's like, there's been more than once you've referenced like time is really funny on the boat. It's absolutely fascinating. Yeah.
And I think my takeaway from that is, you think that taking on something that takes a year to complete can sound quite daunting, and certainly sailing around the world is daunting, period.
Mm-hmm.
But a year can sound like a long time to focus your attention on something important. But I would just say, oh my goodness, it will fly by if you actually give it that attention and stay present to what needs to be done day after day. That year, you'll wish the year had gone by slower, because it's like some days it feels like I must have missed something. I must have missed the detail of it, because it just, like what happened to March, April, May, when we get here in June, it just feels like, it's hard. It's hard because it becomes sort of layers of experience on top of each other, and it's hard to keep them separate and remember them as separate things. It just feels like one big blur of an experience over time.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. When I look back, those are the two big things, is sort of the energy of setting out on this unknown adventure, and then just how weird it's been to experience relative to time that we could have possibly gone as far as we have in such a little amount of time. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, thank you. Wow. I think about all those people, the thousands and thousands of people like saluting you all as you go off to explore. Mm-hmm. That is really cool.
Yeah.
And then time. I feel like time is a thing that I'm curious to talk about endlessly, but that would take a lot of time. So, yeah. And then the other. So actually, it did end up being sort of two separate ideas, which I'm glad of, because we're at now, right? We're at here, and I'm curious about what's inspiring you right now. Like, what is it in your life or in this race or whatever that is like, if anything, especially inspiring?
Well, I mean, the thing that comes to mind for me, and it's funny, and so I'm not sure if inspiring is the word, but it's the reality that while I've done this, little dream adventure of my own, that life has continued outside of it all. And, I'm inspired and grateful that the people in my life have given me the space to do this. And maybe they didn't know, or maybe they did, that would mean as much separation, as much, time apart as it has. But it's inspiring to see how we all have coped and managed it really well. From my parents, just continuing to live their lives like they have for a long time without any help from my sister or I, to my own kids, to Monique, to others, who have found their own rhythm to life and their own ways of going through what they're going through, realizing that, my role is going to be to often hear about things after the fact, to see pictures of, Katrina graduating university and her bridal shower, while we were sailing through the Caribbean, right? Were things that happened, and I was not part of them. But I'm inspired because my sense is people respect the idea of pursuing your dreams and doing something like what I'm doing, to the point that it's okay if some of those things don't fit, the puzzle doesn't quite fit together perfectly as it might have. I would have loved to been at the graduation ceremony. I don't think I would have been welcomed at the bridal shower, but the grad ceremony, to Katrina knows how proud I am of her and of what she's done in her academic career. But to be there for that would have been really nice. But I respect her so much because she also, I think, respects what I'm doing, and has, gone out of her way to show that she's supportive of what I'm doing. And so those are the things that really inspire me right now, is just how the people in my life have handled what's been a long year apart, right? And it's not been easy at times, for sure. We've got, there's health things that have happened. There's people's lives have changed. Like, there's lots of stuff going on, but everybody's just dealing with things as best they can. And, we're all looking forward to seeing each other and being together in a couple months. But
sure.
Yeah, I think that's what's inspiring me right now. The race is the race. It will be, we'll sail across the Atlantic. I'm sure we'll have some more experiences and some fun moments and some, some challenging times. But when it's all said and done, I think I will really, really, really be grateful for the way the people around me have allowed me to do this without worrying all the time that they're going to be okay. And that is unique. Like, there's definitely people on the boat who've had to manage their circle of people and manage their well-being almost on an ongoing basis from the boat. And that's really hard to do because all we have on the boat is an email system that people can sign up for, which I've not used. And so part of not using it is I often don't hear about things till after they've happened. But I think it's part of what I'm appreciating is that by setting that up that way, other people have had to work through stuff, figure out stuff, do stuff on their own. And I don't feel like anybody's resentful that I've taken the time to do what I've done. I think most people in my life are so supportive. It's really, that's inspiring to me.
Wow. You, at first you said, well, I'm not sure that I would use the word inspiring. And and then you came back to that, right? But like, I could have asked that in a more neutral way. And I'm curious if I had, like, I don't know, what's present in your life in any sphere at the moment.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'd say a more neutral answer would have been something around the notion of what happens after it's all done. Seems to be a very common theme in a lot of the conversations as we get closer to the end of the race, right? On the boat, people started asking that question. They wouldn't have asked that question, in November, but now people are starting to ask it. I've heard conversations where people say, I'm really missing work or missing my family, things like that. Those were not conversations we really had early in the race because I don't think it would have been helpful to have them when you knew you had 5, 6, 7 months left. But there's more and more of that. And then from my circle, there's more people curious about what life is going to look like after the race, from where am I going to live, how am I going to earn an income, what have you. And I'm trying to stay true to what I've committed to myself, which is those are questions I want to deal with once we've tied the boat up and the race is over, and I can start to shift gears and reflect on what this race has presented for me in terms of breadcrumbs of opportunities, of inspirations, of new connections that I've made with people around, potential to work together, to sail together, to do, what have you. So that's what's present for me right now too, is this sort of tug of, I want to enjoy the last 30, however many days we have, and stay present like I have to this point. And I know that there's, people waiting for answers on the other side of that. So it's an interesting challenge. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah. I want to come back to something that you just really super briefly touched on, which is Monique's year. She has published a beautiful book. Have you had the opportunity to read her book?
I have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Monique, if you're listening, oh my gosh, it's such a good book. And it's so, I don't know, it's so representative of, like, I've only known Monique as who she is now. Like, I didn't know her when she was sleepless in Toronto, so it was just really wonderful to hear your journey, Monique. And one of the things that as you were just talking, I thought was really special that she said towards the end was that you and she are going to be different people when you're done with this. Even different from when she was writing it, which was back in Bali, right? Like, that is, I don't know if that's something that you reflect on, but that is pretty true, huh?
Pretty true, huh? It is very true. And it was an assumption we made, I think, in going into this year, that we were both going to have the kind of experience that, sort of in quotes would be a life-changing experience, right? But we would have had no clue how we were going to change and what those influences might have been to lead to that change. And certainly writing a book and the whole process of writing a book had started to uncover and I was seeing the change in Monique before we started this year apart, because I was witness to a lot of what's in the book. So, to see it in print, and then to see how people respond to it has been very cool. But yeah, I mean, we went into this year with the idea that we expected we would both change. We expected to get inspired to do things as a result of the experience. And that how that all fit back together afterwards was a conversation that would have to wait until it was all done.
Right.
And, what's cool for Monique is that, having this space this year allowed her to finish the book, allowed her to pursue the way she wanted to launch the book into the world, allowed her to go to places with people that would really resonate with the message and that the book had and the way she was living her life. And, to deal with the reality when she had to fly home and help out, with her family and stuff. So the year has unfolded, I think, for both of us. There's not much we would change, I don't think, if we went in terms of the time, other than the fact that maybe our schedules
would have been nice to
didn't coordinate
exactly.
as well as we had hoped they would.
Yeah.
But, we've both had experiences that have changed us, and it'll be interesting to see how it all fits back together. I have a friend on the boat who's done most of the way around the world, and he and his partner have talked about having this sort of 6 month life where for 6 months a year they do their own things, not necessarily in a 6 month chunk, but so the idea that half of their life is about personal development on their own and half of the life is together.
Wow.
And so just even hearing somebody who's having that kind of a conversation is interesting, because I don't think either Monique or I want to give up this journey that we're on. And nor do we want to try to force something together that doesn't feel aligned with, how we've been showing up this year. So we'll see where that goes. I have no idea.
I mean, it's I guess we also can't know the future, right? No. And then to be open to that, I admire I feel like the word that's in my head is courage. And I think there's definitely some courage, but to be open to whatever it is and to do that, like Monique talks about unconditional love, and I love that. Well,
I think we'll see how it plays out, but the reality is that the commitment that was there from the start was that what we wanted was for both of us to have a year that really allowed us to feel like we were learning more about ourselves and growing as individuals. And that, you want to be in a partnership and a relationship with somebody that wants that for the other person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't want somebody who is intimidated by growth in the other person. And unfortunately, there are a lot of those relationships, right?
Yeah.
And this race is interesting because I have a chance to talk to a lot of people, and there's a lot of people who are doing this race whose partners are in a much more fixed state, and they're really struggling now about what going home is going to be, to have had this year of growth and to know that they're going back to a situation with somebody who hasn't had that same. Yeah. And so they're very curious about what we've been doing. What Monique and I have been doing, but it's another thing that I'm really grateful for, is to have had somebody, and I think courage is a great word, to have the courage to allow their partner to go off and experience something and to know that it will change them, and to not know what that will mean on the other side.
Yeah.
That is unconditional love, because for both of us, regardless of how it plays out, we respect and love each other to the point that if it changes something, it changes something. But I don't think we would go back and change how we've chosen to live this year and what we've gained from it, because it's been just a blessing for both of us.
Yeah. Yeah. That would almost be a denial of self for each of you, right?
Yeah. And unfortunately, there are a lot of relationships built around denial of self to keep somebody else happy, feeling safe, happy, whatever the word is.
Yeah.
Right.
So safe is a good word, or secure, or something like that, like to try and give somebody, even if it goes against the what we would naturally want for you described. Can't remember if it was on this show or if it was in somewhere else, but you've described pressure as not, we feel it as pressing.
Yes.
But what it really is a pulling out of alignment based on what somebody else is communicating that they, need or whatever from us, and then what we would naturally want to do, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting topic, because I should take a moment to congratulate you, because in the past year, you have published a book, which is out there in the world now, which is called Waking Up. And it's a fascinating read. I'm looking over at it on the sofa beside us, because it is, a year that I was able to witness as well, almost pretty much all of it, except for probably the ending part, which I haven't gotten to yet. But to put that out into the world and to share how your experience has been and your growth, and to put that in front of people and say, this may be of some service to you, right? Without telling them how it is. Yeah. It's just, this is what I went through. It's really inspiring to read that as well. Wow. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have discovered that I don't have a lot of patience with, I have a lot of compassion. I don't have a lot of patience with books or folks who want to tell me how to do it.
Yeah.
And so what I much prefer, and the feeling that I'm getting from others is, if I share my experience, it really sparks something for somebody else. And that, I feel like that is where we can reflect for ourselves. We can I think you've said this before about the boat. It isn't that everybody's going to want to go out and do a boat race. It's what are they going to want to do for themselves in their own lives. And there's a moment in the book where I share a messaging that we had done where I was contemplating taking my life, and you were curious about some of the things that had been said that day in a call. And you said, I'm curious, is the England trip still a go? So I was planning to solo hike across England. And I said, it's a go unless I'm dead. I've never wanted anything more for myself. And just thinking about relationships, right? And the capacity for the people who love us and who we love to be able to, I'm getting emotional, to be able to, and you've been such a good example of this, that both of you have, Monique, and you, to give somebody that permission to really be themselves and not know what the future is going to hold, but to know that we're here in this moment, right? That has been such a gift. Yeah. So
I'm not sure if it's in the book because I haven't gotten to it yet, but there was a moment in your journey of tension about whether you had the support of your family or not to do this big thing you wanted to do, right? And there was a question that we came up with around what they needed to be able to support you.
Yeah.
That I've always thought, coaching is a funny thing because I don't know where that question came from in me.
Yeah.
But as soon as I shared it with you, I realized what a powerful question it would be for anybody, right? That we make so many assumptions about what other people's ability to support us or be there for us or allow us to grow or whatever, what's going on there, but we never actually ask them.
Right.
And it's such a beautiful question of respect to the other person to say, like, what do you need to be able to support me to go do what I need right now?
Yeah.
And probably provides surprising answers oftentimes.
I mean, yeah. Well, were you going to, sorry, I was jumping in because I'm excited about what we finished out. What you were going to say.
I just think like that's a gift that your experience has left with me, because that's a question that I will use in my life all the time now. Right? Not to assume that I know the answer to that, but to ask what people need and be respectful of what they need and to find ways to give them what they need without feeling like I have to compromise all the time. Yeah.
And the feeling of asking that, it was scary. It was scary to ask the question, what do you need to support me in doing, what I'm inspired to do? Because it felt so selfish. Mm-hmm. But I've learned to see it in the way that it's been responded to. I've actually, a version of that was really helpful too, as the only female in a household of, of less emotionally expressive of men, maybe is a way to say it, was, what do you need to support me in fully expressing my emotions? Mm-hmm. And the answers I got were amazing. And I think the reason that I feel like it works is because when I'm asking that question, I know I'm okay inside. And I know that whatever comes back to me, I'm going to be able to at least understand the needs and do what I can from a place of calm inside to help someone get what they need. Mm-hmm. It's a really powerful question. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it was of value, and I'm glad it showed up somehow into our our lives, because I think it's one, with sort of the context of what this conversation's about pursuing big dreams and goals. I think for a lot of people, it's where they get stuck is, do they have that support of the people around them? And if not, how much of the, the reason that they don't have support are they making up as a story in their own mind versus just asking the question? And, I've learned just even in the stories of the people on our boat, we had one fella whose father passed away as he was driving to the airport to fly to do the legs that he had signed up for.
Wowzers. And
his father had been the one responsible for him being a sailor, and he was also the power of attorney.
Wow.
And with a whole bunch of siblings. And his family said, no, you must go and do this, right? Like, what they needed was him to take care of a couple of things that would allow them to then take care of what needed to be done with his absence. But they wanted him to keep going.
Really?
Right?
Well, I mean, maybe this didn't come into it at all, but one thing that immediately comes up for me is like what a wonderful way to honor someone's memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's all kinds of layers in terms of that, but I thought that was a beautiful example of what they needed to be able to support him continuing his dream.
Yeah.
Was just a couple of technical legal things needed to get done before he got on the plane to then allow everybody else to do what they needed to do. So it's a question that for anybody listening, like, if there are things that you feel stuck on because of the people around you, what they may or how they may react, whether they would be supportive, it's a question that is very, very respectful and powerful, because it respects that they do have needs that have to be met.
Yeah. It's like a very mutual good feelings. Yeah. Wow. Well,
cool.
Amazing. Yeah. I love that this is where the conversation went today. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
For anyone listening, this book is about the year-ish that I was Coach Andrew's client. And it's a fun read if you would like to get a sense of Andrew as a coach.
It's a fun read to read back, a year what a year together was like for you, because it's rare that you actually get somebody to reflect back, a year together, what you took away and the bits that made a difference and the bits that just kind of went by. So it's been a very cool gift to be able to read that. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. You're welcome. Where in the world are you headed next? Where will we talk to you next?
We will talk probably from Oban, Scotland, which is on the west coast of Scotland. I was reminded today that I have Scottish heritage. My grandfather is from Scotland originally. And northern Scotland, probably, I guess, will be middle of July when we arrive. And then we'll have a short stop. And then the final stretch back to Portsmouth. By the 27th of July is when we arrive back in Portsmouth. So it's we'll start this race on the 27th of June, a couple of weeks across the Atlantic.
27th. Oh, because of the Le Mans start.
Right. Yes, it'll take us a day and a half to motor out through the Potomac and the Chesapeake.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll start around midday on the 27th of June. We'll get to Scotland mid-July. Have a week or 5-day stop, and then final stretch down the coast of Ireland and England, and we'll be back in Portsmouth before we know it, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
The way the time is so fluid.
Yeah.
It would be great to speak with you at the penultimate stop and then the final one.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think there's going to be a lot of energy in Scotland, just because, I think as soon as we get to Portsmouth, there's a prize giving, and then people are going to start heading off and going back to their lives. And a few of us will stay around to get the boat put away. But our team dinner is the day after we arrive. It's like a lunch, because people are already saying they want to be able to leave, the day after we arrive. So, I think Oban's going to be the last stop where we're together as a crew, where we'll celebrate as a crew. And then we also have a lot of British crew members who are going to make their way to Oban and welcome us back to, in a lot of ways that will be the finish of the circumnavigation as soon as we touch ground in the British Isles. I guess we're back. Yeah. We've done the full circle, but...
So I will be curious with the different energies. I do hope we get to talk in both places, because I think that would be really interesting. So
yeah.
Is there anything that you would like to add? I think we're probably wrapping up, ready to wrap up.
Yeah. No, the only other thing I'd say is just a real message of gratitude for all the support and all the followers. And I'm always amazed. I saw a picture of my cousin with the PSP sweatshirt on, and she had followed along, and she had bought, I think, Monique's book, I think it was. So, I know you don't really have a sense of what's going on outside the little bubble that we have.
Right. Yeah.
Social media gives you a little bit, but I know that there's been a lot of people supporting and following along. People who've made contributions to the GoFundMe campaign, which is still open for another month.
Yeah.
Kind of find a way to pay back some bills. But all of that and all the nice messages and everything, it's made a big difference. I know not everybody can get to the ports and see us in person, but just those messages on social media make a big difference. And to hear that people are inspired or following along is pretty cool. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, celebrating you. This is it's exciting to, I don't know, today's one I think I'm going to listen back to, perhaps more than once, because it's just been a really inspiring conversation. So.
Yeah, I've enjoyed being able to do it in person.
I know, in person. So exciting. All right, well, it's funny. We're in person, and I'm totally not remembering how we usually end. We just basically wrap up, right?
I think so. Yeah. And then your magical team at home add the pizzazz to it after the fact. Yes.
The magical team
is
me.
Okay.
I do get a lot of advice, but usually I'm the one who's actually doing the thing. So
very
yeah,
good.
I've grown in that way.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, safe travels until we talk to you again, and we'll see you in Scotland.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Where in the World is Andrew Moss is produced by me, Kay Locke Culp. If, like me, you're inspired by Andrew's journey, you can follow along in his Facebook group, Climb Aboard Andrew's Adventure. The link is in the show notes. Also, this is the longest time that Andrew has been away from his family and his work. He truly has no idea what lies on the other side of this adventure. You can contribute to Andrew's adventure costs and help soften the blow of a year away from his beloved coaching practice by donating to his GoFundMe at the link in the show notes. And Andrew asks that you consider making a donation to his boat's UNICEF fundraiser, also at the link in the show notes. Thank you for listening and for supporting Andrew if you can. Join us next time when once again we answer the question, where in the world is Andrew Moss?